Welcome back, Heat Seekers. If you're looking for guys to pick up for your waiver wire in week 4, we've got 13 plus honorable mentions that we want to talk about, starting with wide receiver Mack Hollins of the Las Vegas Raiders. As you can tell, ownership is low. Targets are high, though. Rick, what do you think about him?
It's crazy that we're talking about Mack Hollins again. It seems like it's been a few years since we've talked about him. The Raiders are struggling, and they desperately need somebody opposite of Devante Adams to step up. Obviously, this week Hunter Renfrow was out, but I think that Mack Hollins is going to fill that outside wide receiver role that they need opposite of Adams, and he's probably going to still be a 4 to 5 target per week guy like he was last week with Hunter Renfrow in. This week was just a little nuts with Renfrow out. We don't expect this, but if you're hurting at wide receiver, he may be a guy if Adams goes down or if Hunter Renfrow is out that gets a much larger workload.
Next up, tight end Tyler Conklin from the New York Jets. As you can tell here, ownership's a little bit higher, 10, 21, 30, but this guy's been getting targeted regularly in this offense. This isn't the first week he's gotten significant amount of targets. What do you think about Conklin in terms of the tight end group as a whole? Is he a startable weekly tight end for you?
Yeah, I just talked about it on my tight end rankings video last week that he is going to be like your safe option, right? I think that he's going to get targeted. Jets are going to throw a lot. And I think he's got 8 or more targets in every game. Now, he's not finding the end zone like you would like, but that's still I think he's had 10 points in every week. We'll take that at tight end if we don't have the big name guys that are at the top of the tight end rankings.
Well, and think about guys like that we would have talked about, like Cole Kmet, who hasn't really been producing. Finally showed a little bit this week, but if you need a tight end to backfill until some of these young studs show up, I mean, this is a good option. The one caveat, though, is Zach Wilson coming back potentially in week 4. Does that do anything to his value? I don't know, because these two, we haven't seen them on the field together. Next up, Devante Parker, wide receiver of the Patriots. Now, obviously, this week, Jacoby Myers was out, so they needed a top option, and you can tell Devante Parker did it and did it well. What do you think about Parker going for the long term? And if Mac Jones is out, what do you think that kind of does to this wide receiver group?
Well, I think that the Patriots are going to trail a lot this year. I just don't think they're the normal Patriots team that we are used to, and they're going to have to throw a lot, and they really need a number 2 wide receiver to step up. They traded for Parker and brought him in for that role. He's probably going to be the Parker that we've known forever, right? He's going to have weeks like this week where he looks like a superstar wide receiver, and then he's going to have some that disappear. But we see that with most wide receivers across the league. I mean, everybody was looking for a big week for Mike Williams this week and didn't get it, right? So yeah. I think he fits that mold. He's not as high end as Mike Williams, but he's going to have spike weeks. He's going to have some duds, but I think they're going to need him going forward this season, no matter what.
And it'll be helpful for them to be throwing a ton. They're going to be needing to play catch up. Speaking of catch up, next up, Greg Dortch, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals. This is a guy that will continue to see targets with other injuries on the team, and with DeAndre Hopkins still about 3 weeks out from being back from his suspension. You can see the ownership's fairly low, except in sleeper, but he's getting targeted a bunch and filling in very well. How do you feel about Dortch as a guy that could be in your starting lineup in the next week or two?
I think when we get DeAndre Hopkins back, there might still be a role for Greg Dortch. He's been more productive than AJ Green. He's been more productive than Rondale Moore when he's played, which obviously Rondale Moore in his second season, we could see a jump. But I think that Dortch could be the third target out of the wide receivers. And in this Arizona offense, when they're not stopping anybody on defense, they're going to have to throw a lot. And there still could be some work for him. So in Dynasty, definitely needs to be rostered. And then in redraft, there may still be a role even after Hopkins comes back. But until Hopkins is back, Dortch, I think, is going to be a startable asset.
Next up, Russell Gage, wide receiver of the Buccaneers. So this guy's got a little bit more ownership than most, and he's been a thing for a little bit. People liked him with the Falcons, and he saw some run. Right now, their top 3 wide receivers are either suspended in Mike Evans or injured in Godwin and Julio. So we know that Evans will be back. What does that do to a guy like Russell Gage's value next week, week after, things like that, as these receivers begin to become healthy or potentially become healthy? How do you feel about him? Is he a guy that can get you 6 to 10 targets a week?
I don't know that he's going to get 6 to 10 a week, but I do think that outside of Mike Evans, he's probably their best outside wide receiver, even when Julio's healthy. So I think Gage has been battling injuries at the beginning of the year as well. I think Gage is going to be involved in this offense, and they are going to always throw the ball a lot. So I think that Russell Gage is somebody that's going to be a factor even after we get Evans back next week. And then Godwin could be struggling to stay on the field all year. This might just be something that is one of those years
injury
where it nags all year. Russell Gage could definitely be a factor after those guys are back. And I just think that he's better than Julio Jones at this point of Julio Jones' career.
For sure. So we've been talking about Christian Kirk, but a guy from the Jaguars receiving corps that we haven't been talking a lot about is Zay Jones. This is a guy that should be picked up because he's been getting involved in the offense. Trevor Lawrence is looking good. They just took down the Chargers this week. This, as you can tell, people don't own him, but he got 10 targets, 85 yards, and a touchdown this week. How are you feeling about Zay Jones in this offense? Because the offense looks competent, looks like it knows what it's doing. It's got a functional run game, plenty of receivers to choose from. Why Zay Jones?
I can't say that I'm confident in Zay Jones helping our fantasy rosters the rest of the season, but he's been getting a lot of volume. And if you're playing in PPR leagues, then at this point, he just has to be rostered and see what happens. I don't know that we're throwing him in the lineups yet. I don't know if we're to that point, but if it continues, then it's going to happen. And he's going to have to be put in to lineups. And it's weird. It's another guy that we were talking about Mack Hollins earlier, that it seems like it's been a few years. Well, it was a while ago that Zay Jones was in Buffalo and had a lot of hype, right? This isn't just a guy. He was a guy that had a lot of hype coming in, and he's finding it late, it seems like.
Yep. A guy that is kind of surprising that we have him on our list, but Isaiah McKenzie, wide receiver from the Bills. Ownership is low, but getting a bunch of targets. This Buffalo offense appears to be able to support multiple wide receivers outside of Stephon Diggs. How do you feel about McKenzie in the short term and the long term for fantasy roster?
I love McKenzie. I talked about it before the season when they brought in Jamison Crowder. I thought that he might be the guy at the slot, and you want the slot receiver in a Josh Allen offense. Cole Beasley averaged 7 targets per game throughout his time with Josh Allen, even with Stephon Diggs, even with Gabe Davis, all of that. The slot receiver is going to get targeted in a Josh Allen offense. And we're seeing it with McKenzie. We've seen it when McKenzie got starts, last year. The guy can put up points, and he's going to be a good slot receiver. And he definitely beat out Jamison Crowder and is the guy at the slot in Buffalo. And we want pieces of the Buffalo offense. And I think he's going to be a safer play week to week than Gabriel Davis, who is going to have boom weeks. But I think McKenzie is going to be that floor guy with some ceiling attached to it.
All right. And this isn't an all wide receiver show. We got a little bit of other people to sprinkle into this. We got a quarterback for you. So if you can tell, as you can tell here, Marcus Mariota is not owned a lot, but he has been producing at a QB1 level, right around QB12 in fantasy points per game. So what does Mariota do? Is this what we're going to see from Mariota the rest of the season based on their schedule? Do you feel comfortable as this guy being a potential starter in your roster?
Yeah, I think right now he has to be considered if you don't have, a stud at the quarterback position. He's got rushing upside, rushing touchdown upside, and then they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I mean, there's no question about it. Atlanta's going to give up points, and they're going to have to throw. So he's going to be involved big time, and he's averaging around 17 points per game right now. And not only that, but it's not just like a spike week, right? I think his highest is 19 and his lowest is like 15.5 out of the 3 weeks. And then this week, sandwiched right in between. In Superflex, he's absolutely a starting quarterback. In one QB, after everything plays out this week, he might be QB 14 in average or 13 in average or 12, somewhere in there. It just depends on how it all plays out. But I mean, right now he's really, really close to being a startable quarterback in one quarterback leagues. That rushing upside's huge. We all know that. That's a game breaker.
All right, so we got a tight end for you. Obviously, you saw him on Thursday night explode for 10 targets for 9 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown. David Njoku is a guy that the fantasy community's been big on for a while, but he just never really produced. It looked like he finally has his opportunity. Mari Cooper's truly the number 1 option, but then Njoku could very well be their number 2 target in the passing game. What do you think about Njoku the rest of the season? Do you feel confident with him as a kind of a mid TE1 in fantasy leagues?
Do I feel confident? No, because we've seen these spike weeks from Njoku in the past. The thing that's different now is that they let Hooper go and they signed Njoku to a pretty decent contract for a guy that hadn't produced a whole lot. And we knew he was a project, right? He was a raw tight end project, and we know tight ends can take a little bit. So maybe this is finally his breakout. And then you've got the upside of him with Deshaun Watson when he returns later in the season.
Huge.
And there is the possibility, though, that Watson relies on the tight end less than Jacoby Brissett does.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a little bit of question there. But, I mean, I look at it more of the upside of if Deshaun Watson comes in and plays well, then that's probably good for Njoku. They don't have a superior number 2 option to Cooper. There's Donovan Peoples-Jones has had moments, and there's people that would like to see
David
Bell get involved more, but there's nobody that really sticks out that says, I am the number 2. That could be Njoku.
Yep. So what we have been looking for in Green Bay is who is Aaron Rodgers' go-to receiver. He's tried Allen Lazard, but Allen Lazard's been fighting injuries. It looks like Romeo Doubs might be that guy. This is now the second week in a row where he's seen some pretty significant action. This time he saw the end zone, 8 catches, 73 yards, touchdown. How are you feeling about Doubs in this Packers offense? And do you think this could be something that continues to grow throughout the season?
He looked good all preseason. I wasn't sold on him, but this week kind of changed my mind because he finally did it where he was, facing top cornerbacks, and now we have Watkins on IR. Watson's battling injury. He's been battling injury since, camp, and is having a hard time staying on the field. Plus he dropped that 75-yard bomb that, Rodgers is still holding against him 3 weeks later. So, I think that this is a guy that out of the majority of the people we have on this list has probably the best chance of being a weekly starter in your roster, in your fantasy roster.
All right. So next up, my Lions broke my heart, but Jamaal Williams broke the end zone a few times. Swift was hurt, so we saw a lot more Jamaal Williams. He gives you that red zone opportunity. Do you feel confident with this guy being a depth rotational piece on a team's roster? And is this somebody you're targeting if you need running back help?
I was completely shocked that his rostership was this low. He has been a top 36 running back 3 years in a row, even playing second fiddle to Aaron Jones and DeAndre Swift. He just produces, and not every week's going to be a 20 carry week or a multi-touchdown week or a 20-point fantasy day, but he needs to be on rosters. I cannot fathom that there's 60% of ESPN leagues that don't have Jamaal Williams roster.
Well, and another guy, Tyler Boyd from the Bengals. This guy is owned in less than 70% of all fantasy and all platforms. It doesn't make any sense to me. This Bengals offense is strong. Tyler Boyd is a solid depth piece that can give you big boom weeks like this. Obviously, wide receiver, you never know. Some weeks you're going to get goose eggs, but this is a big offense that you should want a part of. So what do you think about Boyd going forward, and how do you feel about him in terms of what this offense looks like?
Looking down the stretch last year, he started out slow in the first half of the season, which the whole Bengals offense really started slow last year, especially in the passing game, right? Chase was awesome, but Tyler Boyd was a wide receiver 3 the second half of the season last year, and he was consistent. It wasn't like it was just a couple big boom weeks. This is a guy that you can throw in the flex if you're in a pinch every week, and he has the potential to do what he did this week. And that's what you want out of those flex options. Is he's probably going to get you 3 catches for 30 yards and not blank you, but he has the potential to put up 20-point weeks.
Right. Another guy that you talked about big all offseason was your Chicago Bears. Khalil Herbert, running back from the Bears, less than 50% ownership across the board, but looks very comfortable in this offense and showed it when given the opportunity this week. What do you like about Khalil over a guy like Monty or anybody else? What makes this guy special in this Bears offense?
I just think he fits the zone run scheme better than Montgomery. Now, Montgomery's good. Montgomery, we just saw last week, popped off and looked really good. But I think that Herbert is going to get more involved as the season goes on. And if Monty does miss time, he's day-to-day right now with the injury that he sustained today. But if he does miss time, then this is the production we can see. This dude's almost got more 100-yard games than he does starts. I think he started 4 games. He's got 2 or 3 100-yard games. It's just he produces when he gets the ball in his hand. And you don't want to leave that up to chance. If you have a spot on your bench, you want these types of players, because if Monty goes down, you immediately have a top 15, 16 running back that you can throw in your lineup. That's what you want. You can get them for nothing right now on waivers. This week's going to be harder. You should have had them already. I've been telling you all off season. That is what it is.
It is what it is. All right, so we got some honorable mentions. These are guys that are owned and have availability in about 10 to 20% of leagues on average. So your league, he might already be rostered. If not, you need to grab Dameon Pierce, running back from the Texans, Chris Olave, wide receiver from the Saints, and Curtis Samuel, wide receiver of the Commanders. These are all guys that and I know all 3 of these guys are guys that made shorts on recently that need to be in lineups because they have the big potential to produce. And Chris Olave has been huge as a rookie in this Saints offense, even with Michael Thomas and Landry and some of these guys. He's been producing well. Anything you want to add about these three guys other than why are they not rostered?
Yeah, these guys they should be 95 to 100% rostered right now. And Pierce hadn't really broke out. Olave was, if he would have caught more of his targets last week when he had 13 targets, then he'd be way up there. But we know Jameis is going to chuck it, baby. He's going to chuck it. And then Curtis Samuel, he's going to get used heavily in this offense. It's evident. He had another 7 receptions this week. It wasn't as big from a fantasy points production standpoint, but the usage was there. That whole offense just shit the bed this week, So
rough week.
I like all 3 of these guys too. Definitely.
And we like you guys. We appreciate you guys watching every week. You've been helping us explode this year. Each week, we're going to give you waiver wire. So hopefully you guys like, subscribe, hit that notification icon. If you have questions, drop them below. We'll get to you guys next week, and we'll see you later.